Good afternoon, I'm Edlin Gao.
And I'm Sean Yao. This is One News Now. After 12 joint committee hearings on ABS-CBN's franchise renewal, lawmakers are expected to wrap up their deliberations today.
Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano was quick to brush off claims that lawmakers are being pressured by certain groups on their votes. And to tell us more about this, we have Mian Los Baños reporting to us live from the Batasang Pambansa. Mian, good morning.
Yes, good afternoon, Buck and Sean. There's still no final decision whether the voting on the renewal of ABS-CBN franchise will happen today, but the congressmen are expected to summarize or wrap up all the arguments presented in the past 12 hearings. 92 legislators are expected to decide on the embattled network's fate. Of the number, 46 are members of the Legislative Franchises Committee. The other 46 are composed of lawmakers who are ex-officio members of the panel. These include the Speaker of the House, the majority and minority leaders, as well as their deputies. Should the committee decide to render their votes today, a quorum which is 1/5 of the original members, equivalent to 9, is needed. Majority of those who will be attending is needed for ABS-CBN to secure the much-desired franchise. If the committee members favor the renewal of ABS-CBN franchise, this is not yet a full-blown victory for the giant network. The bill will have to be sponsored in the plenary, which will take place on July 27 when the House opens its sessions. It will be deliberated by 302 members of the chamber, and it must pass on the second and third reading before it reaches the Senate. Based on the previous pronouncements of some senators, the upper house's hearings for the franchise will likely not take long. House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano reiterated that each vote must be based on the appreciation of the facts presented by both sides. He also dismissed rumors of threats and intimidation coming from certain groups, congressional leaders, and religious organizations. Buck and Sean, Kabataan Party List Representative Sara Elago believes that ABS-CBN has been already cleared of all allegations after the 12 hearings conducted by the Legislative Franchises Committee. Senator Mig Subiri, meanwhile, appeals to the congressmen to give ABS-CBN a chance to just amend the franchise bill and not shut them down. And Senator Subiri said that closing ABS-CBN down is too unreasonable and excessive. As of now, Buck and Sean, I think the congressmen aren't starting the wrapping up or the summation of the arguments yet. So if you have any questions, I'm open to it.
Man, okay, in summation, you're talking about the summation. Who gets to make a summation and how many people are expected to make summations? Do all the members of the committee get to speak or only one representative for each side?
Based on the preliminary information that I got, Buck, I think there would only be one representative from each camp. I think it's going to be, if the information is right, Representative Marcoleta will do the summation for the opposition or for the group opposing the renewal of ABS-CBN's franchise, and Congressman Rufus Rodriguez will be the one wrapping up the arguments for the side or for the group who is supporting the renewal of ABS-CBN's franchise. But of course, we don't know yet if other congressmen will insist to participate in the deliberation this afternoon, considering that this might be the last hearing before they go on voting for the franchise renewal. Buck and Sean?
Right, we're expecting 92 congressmen to cast votes, and 46 from the Franchise Committee and another 46 from the leadership. Is everyone expected to vote? No emergency sick leaves, no abstentions is, of course, the rumor that has been going around. Any clarity on this?
It depends on the number of attendees, Sean, but of course, this is a very controversial franchise bill, so we are really expecting that many of the congressmen, if not all the 92 members and ex-officio members will be present. They don't want to miss this history in the making of whether the franchise will be renewed or not, and of course, deciding on the fate of the largest TV network in the country. So we'll see. I haven't seen any of them yet. 5 minutes ago before I went out of the press office to do this live report. So I have yet to see how many of them will actually be attending the summation hearing for today, Sean.
Okay, that was Mian Los Baños reporting live from the Batasang Pambansa. We hope to see you again in a little bit.
Supporters and employees of ABS-CBN trooped to the House of Representatives to ask lawmakers for a fresh 25-year franchise for their network.
Media groups and other supporters maintain that this is clearly an issue of press freedom. To tell us more about this, we have JC Cosico reporting to us live from Quezon City. JC, what's the latest?
Sean, ABS-CBN supporters and employees held a caravan from their headquarters at the Sergeant Esguerra Avenue in Quezon City to the lower house to ask lawmakers to give their franchise a chance. Hundreds of vehicles and motorcycles adorned with ribbons and balloons in red, blue, and green. The colors of the network blew their horns as they reached Batasan. Supporters and employees, including ABS-CBN's artists, were calling for protection of press freedom. They also urged lawmakers to vote yes to ABS-CBN franchise. They wore face masks and observed physical distancing. The National Union of Journalists of the Philippines reiterated that politicians should not meddle with any media organization's editorial content. The group also maintained that the sold ABS-CBN franchise is an issue of press freedom. Bayan Muna Party List Representative Carlos Zarate also joined the caravan. We talked to the supporters and employees of ABS-CBN, and here's what they have to say.
This is actually vindictiveness of this administration of the President to media na hindi niya madiktahan. No? So, ayun yung nilalabanan natin na yung pagdikta nila sa kung ano ang gusto nilang gagawin ng media, kung ano ang gusto nilang ire-report.
Pero sa aming pagtataya, kami mismong mga sponsors nito ng panibagong prangkisa ay nakita natin na sa kabuuran walang matibay na dahilan para hindi bigyan ng prangkisa ang ABS-CBN. Hindi napatunayan halimbawa ang usapin ng paglabag sa konstitusyon dahil daw dayuhan si Ginoong Gaby Lopez. Pero ang mga ahensya na mismo ng pamahalaan, ang Department of Justice, ang Bureau of Immigration, nagsasabi na siya ay natural-born Filipino citizen.
Pinakamahalaga po dahil ongoing yung aming CBA this coming August, no? Nakasalalay yung prangkisa doon sa CBA namin.
Sean, a prayer vigil will be held later this afternoon at the ABS-CBN headquarters. Back to you.
That was JC Cosico reporting live from Quezon City. And let's take a look back at what happened and what did not happen with the ABS-CBN franchise. The network's franchise expired on May 4, 2020. Well, this year, broadcast networks usually get a 25-year franchise, although the Constitution puts the limit at 50 years. Now, under the law, only Congress is allowed to grant franchises to broadcasting companies. We are talking here about a pre-war law that puts broadcast companies, specifically radio stations, at the mercy of Congress. Now, at least 11 franchise bills for ABS-CBN were pending with the 18th Congress. But hearings for these bills only started on March of this year.
That was contentious, Ed. So why exactly did they only start March of this year? The 18th Congress has been in session for about a year.
Yeah,
already.
actually, you can go further back. The
17th Congress, it was there.
Yeah.
I think even
the
the 16th Congress, right?
There
During
were even
Pinoy's
bills
time.
filed during the 16th Congress, but the bills were also shelved. And then we had the 17th Congress, or the first 3 years of the Duterte administration, where the bills also did not see any action. And then going to the 11th or the 18th Congress, we had several bills. The earliest bill filed was in July, just a few days after the elections, for the renewal.
Yes, and we can recall that it was not marked as a priority, but due to, I think, intense or immense pressure from the public, Speaker Cayetano decided to have the hearings. And now here we are.
In fact, if you do remember, the Speaker was even saying at one point that he wanted the hearings to begin after this year's SONA.
Yes,
Because they were
that.
working on the presumption that the NTC would allow them to operate with a provisional franchise. So
That's right. And then they cut them off on May 4.
No, as expected, of course, the franchise hearings did not meet that May 4 deadline. The National Telecommunications Commission withdrew its earlier commitment that it gave to the Franchise Committee to grant the network a provisional franchise. And on May 5 of this year, the NTC finally issued a cease and desist order. The network was forced to stop free TV broadcasts. We have to make that clear. Free TV broadcast on the same night. This
So
means
it's just Channel 2, DZMM as well.
yes,
right? So
yes.
those two.
And now as well, the digital broadcast.
Yes, but that's much later on. It took maybe a month
Yeah.
after.
Because under the law regulating the issuance of franchises, you're only talking about free TV franchises, not talking about cable franchises and so on down the line. So ABS-CBN is still operating, but it is only broadcasting
On cable
TV and on the internet. Now, in the past 12 hearings, several issues have been raised and discussed by the Committee on Franchises and the Committee on Good Governance, and these include
bias
what they call
reporting.
bias reporting. I'm not going to talk about that. Well, let's
that
not.
has quotation marks, yeah.
Let's leave this for the summation. But in brief, these are the issues that were discussed in the last 12 hearings. Let's hear them again as they begin the summations today. So, reporting with bias, citizenship, tax payments, Philippine depositary receipts or the use of them, and whether the proper taxes were paid for the PDSs or PDRs, and the use of the frequencies versus the channels. And so we have come to this. Now, and so today we have the summation of the hearings and an expected vote by the committee anytime soon, possibly tonight, possibly tomorrow. Now, here's a list of those casting their votes as compiled by the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism. The Committee on Franchises is, of course, headed by Palawan Congressman Franz Alvarez. The committee has a total of 46 members from both party list and congressional districts. Now, aside from the 46 members of the Committee on Franchises, we also have the other members, what they call the ex-officio members. These are 46 congressmen who also get to cast their votes. These are not exactly members of the committee per se, but they are leaders of the House of Representatives.
I like to call them members of the congressional leadership. This includes, of course, a speaker, the majority floor leader, and all his deputies, all the deputies of the speaker, and there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
46.
Yes, 46 total. I mean, we did not see that many deputy speakers.
You're actually looking at
Congresses.
1/6 of Congress being in the House leadership.
You did the math. Yeah. Yes, 90 plus out of like 300 something.
Diba?
So,
Ilagay mo sa 50 and you have 300 congressmen, so it's 1/6.
yeah, very good at math. Okay, so again, 92 congressmen, and as Mean said earlier, everyone's expected to attend.
But yung kasi, it's all now done by Zoom eh. So you have to be really, really sick or really, really avoiding the issue for you not to cast your vote.
Yeah, which is kind of impossible. I think only hospitalization will excuse members today. So we do expect everyone to show up.
Yeah. So these are the other 46. So sabi mo nga 46, so 92 all in all who will get to cast their vote at least theoretically. Ito yung mga ex-officio members. Now, okay, these are basically the rules. Number one, majority rules. Siyempre, majority rules. So technically, if you're looking at 92, 46
Straight
plus
up
1.
bilangan yan, diba? You just count.
So 46 committee members, 46 ex-officio members. However, ang importante dyan kasi is that you have to remember it's majority of the voting members. So if only 10 get to vote, then majority lang yan.
Yeah.
Ang kailangan mo lang naman for a quorum of group this size is 9 members. So, yun. So, it's not exactly 46 dapat plus 1.
Yes, not exactly, but again, expectation versus reality
Again,
is
you're
a
looking
very
at,
real thing.
The Zoom reality. We're not yet at the scenario, so should we wrap it up? No, not yet.
Not yet. Let's
Okay.
go on. Let's go on.
Okay, scenario number one. Scenario number one is the franchise is approved by a majority vote by the committee, both the members and the ex-officio members. If this happens, this is only step one. Well, of course, it's the most important
We know
step.
what happens next. It goes to plenary after this, if
So
that happens.
it goes, well, it does take some time kasi the committee has to make a committee report, and then the committee report is reported out on the floor, and then you go into a plenary debate and all that. Now, given the fact that it's not, of course, marked as urgent by the president, so you cannot have approval on second and third readings on the same day. So you also have to space those.
Yeah.
So
You have to set them, and it's already July. And they were technically already supposed to be on recess, actually.
And then don't forget that I think the timetable being looked at by the speaker was by July 27, or more or less around after SONA. But
right
that is,
after SONA.
That is also the time when Congress starts deliberating or beginning to peruse the budget.
Yes.
And
Which
then you
this
have
is
that
really
big
crucial.
question on whether you pursue the budget first or you pursue this.
franchise.
And that becomes a separate debate altogether. So committee report and then discussion and voting by plenary on second and third reading. Now, usually, because it's a franchise bill, medyo dekahon yan dapat eh,
Yeah.
at least before.
Yeah.
Hindi na problema yan sa bicameral committee, level
Yes.
yung House and Senate.
Correct.
Sorry, I'm getting ahead of the horse. Out the cart pala.
So it has to also, as we know, lawmaking here is not just
It's
Congress.
two
It has
chambers.
to have, yes,
Okay. So the
bicameral.
franchise undergoes the same process in the Senate. They have to wait for the Congress to finish it. It's a franchise. So again, committee approval first, and then it goes to the plenary, and then second, and then third reading, and then technically bicam.
Yeah.
But usually don't expect much trouble there in the bicam, assuming it gets to that
It gets
that
to
far.
that point, yeah.
Okay. And then here's the big question:
President.
will the president approve it? Of course, the president has the power to veto.
Yeah.
And the president has the power to sign.
Yeah.
So
Or the
big
power to
question
just
is-
let it lapse.
Yeah, but if he lets it lapse, and then that's basically the same thing as almost signing it.
Yeah.
So there you go. That
Yeah, the
actually
big question mark.
that actually is an even bigger question mark. Of course, you had the president say before, at least a few weeks ago, that he has forgiven ABS-CBN, but everything's always up in the air.
So I guess what we expect today is to see whether or not how many of them turn up, how many of them turn up to vote, and how.
And I suppose more importantly, yes, it's the first step, but it's the most important step.
Yes, there are, of course, there is word that they're trying to plan to kill it at the committee level, which would just...
Because if you don't get past this step, then there's nothing else to talk about. And that's
Yes.
where we go to scenario number
Number
two.
two.
Okay, scenario number two is the franchise is rejected by the committee, of course, by a majority vote. If that happens, there are several questions here. Is it an issue subject to an appeal or a
Can they just
motion
file
for
another-
consideration? Those are two things.
Yeah.
Because the committee chairman earlier said in an interview with Rappler that there's an appeal process of sorts. Of
Yeah.
course, well, the thing is that I was asking the congressional reporters, they've never heard of that. Perhaps it is in the rules, but they still have to check on that. But it's never been applied before, so we'll see whether or not this is really in the rules or whether this is leeway given to the committee chairman to consider appeals.
There's a lot of things that have been unprecedented anyway this year, so this is quite, I mean, it would not shock me if it happened.
And at
So-
the same time, it would take a great deal of huffing and puffing to get an appeal approved if the vote is, largely
much
on one
majority
side.
no,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so it'll be something that will be really convincing.
Or as a lot of people said, maybe they can just file a new one. Of course,
That's
no
the other one.
guarantees.
That's the other one.
Yeah.
So the question is whether you can appeal or not, and if you cannot appeal, the other option, of course, is the filing of a new franchise bill or bills for ABS-CBN. But then
But
again,
then
that
again,
undergoes.
So much time. So much time.
It's back to square one.
Yeah.
And you know how it is. When you file a bill, there's no guarantee it will be considered for first reading. First reading is when you start assigning the bills to committees.
So there is no guarantee. That's why the president always likes to mark priority bills to make sure it actually gets noticed. A lot of bills have been filed. It's almost an exercise of congressmen to file bills, since technically that is their job. But again, no guarantees, like you said, Ed, that these bills will actually get anywhere.
Yeah.
They actually just sound good sometimes, but they never get anywhere. Sad to say for a lot of bills.
Yeah, and of course that also raises the question of whether or not ABS is willing to undergo the same thing all over again with the same issues and be rejected again.
With the same Congress.
Yeah. And lastly, of course, the other option is for ABS-CBN to just wait it out until
Wait it out.
2022. That's an expensive option.
And it's very, I mean, it also leaves a lot of questions, like what's going to happen to everybody affiliated with ABS-CBN.
Yeah.
That's just their employees and also people that are affected by the lack of a big media network.
Because ABS-CBN was claiming that it was losing several hundred million a day, and that it would have to start laying off people by August without a franchise.
Yes, well, actually, I have friends that work there, and some of them have already been informed. So that is the sad reality. I think, and things are starting to heat up in Congress, or at least things are starting to move in Congress. So we now throw you to the summation
Let's go
hearing.
back to the summation hearing, which I believe has started.
Through the stations of ABS-CBN. It also brought back issues raised by Senior Deputy Minority Floor Leader Janet Garin, the former DOH Secretary. Issues she had been repeatedly